Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Behn. I'm Eh-cho, Dunne-Za. Eh-cho. To begin, I acknowledge my presence in unceded Waswas territories, the lands of the Amamutsan Tribal Nation. Is there anybody from that nation here, actually, who can welcome me properly? Okay. There's a big issue in the West where I come from about tribal acknowledgements and then becoming somewhat superficial. And I had the privilege of working with some people who are changing that. And not to be disrespectful, but that's an issue that we're grappling with in my territory, in the unceded territories of British Columbia. What you're about to see is 5 years of my life compressed into 77 minutes as viewed through the lens of two white filmmakers. So while it's described as my movie, it is not. It's a movie about me. And a few points about it. It was intended to be impact documentary. I consented to participation carefully and after discussion with my family, because there are very real tangible impacts professionally, personally, economically, to doing this kind of work in our territory, because where we come from in the northeast corner of British Columbia, adjacent to the tar sands, where the largest hydraulic fracturing operations on the planet are going on, and the third major hydroelectric dam on the Peace River system is being built. And last Tuesday, the BC electorate elected the first minority government in over 60 years. This film was designed to be impact documentary at a very critical nexus point, which will be kind of described in the film. The film was also intended to disrupt dominant narratives because it's not a simplistic left or right, environmentalist versus economist reality. I didn't know it was actually going to be about me the way it was. I refused to watch it. I refused to participate in the editorial process, on the grounds that my obligation to you, as those who would view it, and to posterity, and to the issues, and to the ancestors, and to the unborn, is just to be myself. It's their job to interpret, and I will leave it to you to assess the result. The other aspect of the film I want to mention, it was meant to valorize the struggle to find effective weapons in the Great War, that is those who would take without end versus those who wouldn't. You could argue that that war has been waged for a long time, and that war has very real consequences. We buried my auntie on Wednesday. She had COPD and then caught a nosocomial infection, a drug-resistant infection, in ICU in Vancouver last week, and died. And her COPD, in part, much like my birth defect, because I have 7 titanium plates and 21 screws in my face, may have derived from, and in all likelihood does derive from, the massive omnipresent contamination, both acute and chronic contamination. So when I say the term war, I do use that term advisedly. And the last point about this is that this film partially destroyed my life and my practice. And while I'm very privileged to be here, and thank you for organizing, in particular the staff, actually the unsung heroes who make all this happen and move the chairs and man the cameras and make sure there's a proper setup. I acknowledge that, but there was consequences to this thing, and I am quite happy, and I would expect actually that we discuss that in detail afterwards. I'll be available for Q&A. And the deal right now is I will answer with absolute honesty and frankness. I am utterly available. One of the issues in the film that I insisted be included was my own growth as a man, as an accountable man within a patriarchal environment, and my own coming to grips with my need to be accountable to a couple Indigenous women in particular involved in the movement who were with me and were hurt by me. I was very emotionally fucked up by virtue of my sexual abuse history and colonization and my father's experience in residential school and those kind of things. And I wanted that narrative present because it was real. It dominated my life and was actually a large part of why I attempted suicide last year after the release of the film. So I am not going to hold back. I do not pull punches. I'm not going to mess around. Whatever you see, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to ask about, from the mechanics of the film to the more sophisticated, nuanced, weird stuff, I'm present for you. But my expectation is that you be courageous and honest in your questions. Okay? That's the deal. That's the relationship that's foundational to real discourse and dialogue, which is the real reason I came here. Tomorrow I'll talk more about my actual work, but as a teaser, in part I will explain what we did with the blood from this large scarification on my arm, and I'll explain to you what's going on with the intersection of water, energy, and capitalism and indigenous law, which is what I'm interested in, and also emergent science. I'm doing a lot of work on pregnant women and transgenerational inheritance of disease in Northeast BC right now, and there's some very interesting narratives to be discussed that build upon pretty much everything we've been talking about. So enjoy a compressed version of my life. Watch out for the shower scene. I'm not joking. Yeah, and I'll be available afterwards, okay? Cheers.